Here we go. We are live, but let me get that link out to you and everyone else. Thank God I have a landline connection. All right, so here's the link. Discord. Click. There you go. That's the link. And it's already shared out on Twitter. So if any of those guys are still awake, they'll probably be tuning in. And with that, we'll go ahead and give a proper start to the show, which starts right now.
Okay.
Yahoy, Brother Gigi here. And although this is under the Shift Happens B-Sides and Rarities channel, this is not Shift Happens. This is a new venture we're doing called the Elder Scrolls Loratory. Which, if you don't know what that means, if you don't even know what Elder Scrolls means, you probably are not going to like this. But that's alright. Because there's quite an audience elsewhere that will. But if you're bored and you just have nothing else to do, and you want to hear some hardcore geekery going on, this is the place for you. But other than that, if you guys want to hear some epic history of the Elder Scrolls, then you are in the right place. Whether you're listening on YouTube or Spreaker, or Twitter or Facebook, however you're getting here. Oh wow, Daryl is actually here. Hey, what's up, Daryl? Daryl can't hear anything. That is not my problem. Let me okay, she can hear it. All right, so with that, so this is a very different sort of show. It's called the Elder Scrolls Loratory. Hey, what's up, Daryl? Now, so yes, we are doing a show, and it's live right now. This is the first episode of the Elder Scrolls Loratory, which is it's a podcast that me and my buddy Franz from New Zealand have decided to do because Franz is just an unlimited. I don't know if dictionary is the right word. What's the word I'm looking for? Basically a dictionary. You know, if you want to know anything about the lore of Elder Scrolls, you could look online. You could look at the wiki, the Elder Scrolls wiki. You could look at the other one, or you can just ask this dude, which is much easier. It's he knows just about everything. And so for the first episode tonight, we are going to get into the Ayleids and possibly, if we have time, the Falmer. This is going to be an hour-long show. So let's go ahead and get started. So let me, let's start off exactly like you were saying before the show. So who, first of all, who are the Ayleids, and how does that? What is the relation from the Ayleids to the High Elves, the Wood Elves, and the Dark Elves?
Okay, well, all of the elven races are all related because they all come from one elven race called the Aldmer. And the Aldmer are descendants of the old Elfner Fae, but that's a discussion for a whole nother episode.
Yeah. But let's not forget they all came originally from another continent that's not accessible.
Called Aldmeris.
It's called Aldmeris, which is south of Canerith Roost, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, continue.
Yeah. So, for some reason I don't know why, presumably because Tamriel had better options and was bigger and was more beautiful, they moved to the Somerset Isles, and then from there, the Somerset Isles was very strict on things like Daedra worship, and so they lots of Daedra worshipping elves had to move out, and that is one of the reasons why the Ayleids might have moved out, and then they moved to Cyrodiil.
So hold on, I've got to. Okay, because very clearly, you have the High Elves that moved to the Somerset Isles in Oregon and all that, and then you got the Wood Elves that moved into Grotwood, Reaper's March, and that whole area. But then you've got the Dark Elves that somehow went way out of their way to go over to Morrowind. Why? What happened to the original continent down there? Why were they under attack? Did a volcano erupt? Like why? Why would they even leave there in the first place?
Leave Old Maris.
Yeah, Aldmeris, yes.
Yeah. I think it was because, like I said before, I think it was because Tamriel was bigger, had more opportunities, and was more beautiful.
Oh, that's right. You did say that. Yeah.
And I'm really not completely sure why.
Yeah, I don't think that was ever very properly explained. They just sort of mention it in passing when you read some of the lore books, but I don't think it was very properly explained.
Yeah. So yeah, they moved to Cyrodiil, and they were actually one of the greatest elven races, possibly being as powerful as the Dwemer, who are the dwarves.
And now, real quick, let's stop right there because the Dwemer. Now, when you say the word dwarf, we think about Elder Scrolls dwarves. Those really short, fat people. But in fact, now correct me if I'm wrong, but the Dwemer in Elder Scrolls, they're not dwarves at all like we think of in Elder Scrolls. They were in fact another race of elf. Am I correct about that?
Yeah. Yep, you are correct.
Yeah.
Yep, which is pretty interesting, and you can see this because in Morrowind, you can find journals, and you can ask the last dwarf to decipher them, and he says that it's written in Old Maris and Dwemer, and so it's yeah, they come from Old Maris, and also they had pointy ears and stuff like that.
Yeah. So okay, so how come? So originally, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the first move from Aldmeris was to Somerset Isles. Is that right?
Yep.
So
Yep, that's right. Oh no, wait, actually, sort of not really, because there was a huge rebellion in Old Maris, and then they lost the rebellion, and then they were all exiled to an island called Piandunea, and then that's where the Maormer come from. Yeah, all the descendants of the rebels.
okay,
But I don't think that really counts.
so
But
that's another good point. So are you saying that all of the elves relocated to Somerset first, and then that's when the Malmer branched off, the Dunmer branched off, and the Bosmer branched off?
yeah, pretty much.
So what caused all of that branching from?
Well, mainly because of difference of ideas.
But so what caused the difference of ideas? Because when they were both living on Aldmer, when not both, when all four of them were living on Aldmeris, not including the Snow Elves, which I imagine they came from there too, so that's five. They all seemed to be on board with the same program, right? But then all of a sudden, once they got to Somerset, you've got the Dummer praising Daedra, you've got the Aldmeri, the High Elves rather, praising the Aedra. And so, what caused all that? Does that have something to do with Molag Bal, or what? How did they split
no.
up like that?
I think it was mostly just because they arrived, and then they just changed their ideas all of a sudden.
But why? Have we ever
Well,
have we ever been
because
given a reason why?
the Dunmer, um, the Dunmer worship the Daedra, because the Daedra are actually more powerful than the Aedra.
It seems like it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they are more powerful. And the Aelids worship the Daedra, or some of them did. So they could get more power.
So
Because the Aelids actually had armies of Tremora to help them.
so it seems like that original continent, Aldmeris, was somewhat of a democracy where there was a left side and a right side and a middle side and an outside and a green party, and they had a lot of different things going on there.
Yeah.
And then once they had to split, they sort of all parted their own ways, I guess.
Yeah. Thing is, it's hard to talk about Aldmeris because we literally know the only stuff that we know about it is that the elves thought that it existed, and that's all we know about it. So, and that
Well,
the Dharma revolted.
well, they had to come from somewhere, so I'm sure that's probably where they came from.
Yeah. Some also say that because the old Elnafey and the Elnafey are basically the Elnafey are the descendants of the humans, and the old Elnafey are the descendants. I mean the. Never mind. Okay, yeah. Let's just get on the Aelids. I'm getting confused.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Aelids. The Aelids were like a very, very powerful race, and it took gods to have to come down to kill them.
Now, why would they want to kill them?
Because, well, two words basically: brutal slave masters.
Are you talking about how they used
humans as slaves?
Oh, I was about to say the lizard people.
No. They enslaved the native humans.
Oh, okay.
And then those were the Needs, and then they later became the Imperials. But yeah, so basically they're like really brutal, and that's why they worship Daedra to get power. That's how they got armies of Jamoras, because they sacrificed humans in the most like brutal forms.
Interesting. So this is way before this is way before Argonians came anywhere near elves.
No. The Argonians were all around Tamriel before the elves came along, but then because Tamriel was a lot different than you would imagine it today, like it had giants the size of like trees, and it was very different. So there were things like Khajiit and Argonians all around Tamriel, and different beast races.
Right on. Now, real quick, let me. By the way, any dead silence, I'm gonna cut it out. By the way, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Now, okay, so I think I've sort of confused, I feel like I've confused the Aldmeris continent with the other race of people that came from way north of Tamriel.
Yeah. So that's Atmora, which is the native homeland of the Nords.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically the Aelids were the elven race that inhabited Cyrodiil, and the biggest misconception about them, like literally like a third, like most of the people about the Aelids believe this. They believe that they were an empire, but that's not true. They were like the dwarves. They were split up in many different smaller city-states. which is yeah, and they were very good at magic. They had very, very powerful magic. Powerful enough to, or like the Altmer were interested in these things called towers. Towers kept up Mundus. They held Mundus up, and if they were all destroyed, then Mundus would collapse.
Now,
And so basically,
well, sorry, folks. Real quick, define Mundus.
Mundus is the mortal like dimension.
Basically, our reality. In other words.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oblivion and Aetherius. We've been to Aetherius before, which was in Skyrim. Sovngarde is in Aetherius, and have been to Oblivion many times.
Yeah, and so what's the word for there's another word that is basically what we would call the universe.
The cosmos.
Yeah, no, but they're oh wait, no. I miss that's not what I meant. Because when we say Tamriel, we think of a lot of I feel like a lot of people assume that means the whole world, but in
Yeah.
fact Tamriel only means the part of
one
the
continent.
world that yes, it's one continent. So what is the name of the whole globe?
Nirn.
Nirn. That's right. There it is. All right. Yeah, just wanted to get that out of the way. Once again,
okay.
I'm not the pro here, people. I'm asking the questions.
So yeah, they studied these towers, which to us just look like mountains, like Red Mountain, which is a giant volcano in Morrowind, and then there's the Throat of the World, which is the huge mountain in
High
in
Hrothgar?
Sky. Yeah, where High Hrothgar is.
Yeah.
And so the Oldmer studied these towers. Now this is the Oldmer, not the Ayleids, and because they split off, they had the knowledge that the Oldmer have, and they learned how to build these towers, and that's what the White Gold Tower is. It's one of these towers that keeps up all of existence, and they built that.
Really?
Yeah, they built the Imperial City.
So, okay, so who, this is something I've never, not to get too far off topic, but, when you come to the events of Skyrim, those old guys up there at the top of High Hrothgar and the, whatever that little temple is called, who are those people? What descendants did they come from?
They're Nords.
Really?
Yeah.
It seems like they would be Bretons, if anything. But they're Nords?
Yeah, they're Nords. Because it's a very, traditional thing.
Interesting.
Nords. Shouting is like a form of sort of like Nord magic.
Yeah, well, I thought shouting was a form of, having dragon blood.
Well, you don't have to have dragon blood to shout, because Ulfric can shout.
Ah, good point. Yeah, good point. Good point. So, all right. Also, not to sidetrack, even though I am. So where exactly? Because I think that this is a pretty interesting point in the history of the lore that everybody knows the result of it, but nobody quite knows how it happened, which is the snow elves, or in other words, the Falmer, which ended up basically going underground and turning into some sort of, not quite undead, but these blind sort of vicious creatures when they actually used to have, they used to be just as proper as the high elves or the wood elves. But somewhere in history, the snow elves sort of got knocked underground. Was that because of the
It's because of the Nords.
yeah, it's because of the Nords that came from that continent on the north, wasn't it?
Yep. And that brings me to the book that I wanted to
Yeah.
show you.
Yeah, let's get right into it.
So basically, um, the snow elves attacked Sarthor, which was the biggest human city in Tamriel, and they attacked it. The biggest ongoing theory is that they attacked it because there was a huge orb called the Eye of Magnus, which is really powerful.
Yeah.
I think that it could be as powerful as the Heart of Lorcan, which turned people into gods.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you play Skyrim, the Eye of Magnus has a pretty profound role, and even the Psijics had to come in and try to interfere with that.
Yep. Okay, so I've got the book. The book is called The Fall of the Snow Prince, an account of the Battle of the Most Ring as transcribed by Lochheim chronicler to the chieftain Ingialdr White-Eye. From whence he came we did not know, but into the battle he rode on a brilliant steed of pallid white. Elf we called him, for elf he was, yet unlike any other of his kind. We had never seen before that day. His spear and armor bore the radiant and terrible glow of unknown magic, and so adorned this unknown rider seemed more white than warrior. What troubled, nay, frightened us most at that moment was the elven ranks rose from the elven ranks. It was not fear, not wonder, but an unabashed and unbridled joy, the kind of felicity felt by a damned man who has been granted a second chance at life. For at that time the elves were as damned and near death as ever they had been during the great skirmishes of Solstheim. The Battle of the Most Ring was to be the final stand between Nord and Elf on our fair island led by Ysgramor. We had driven the elven scourge from Skyrim and were intent on cleansing Solstheim of their kind as well. Our warriors, armed with the finest axes and swords Nord craftsmanship could forge, cut great swaths through the enemy ranks. The slopes of Most Ring ran red with elf blood. Why then would our foe rejoice? Could one rider bring such hope to an enemy so hopeless? To most of our kind the meaning of the call was clear, but the words were but a litany of elven chants and cries. There were some among us, however, the scholars and chroniclers, who knew well the words and shuddered at their significance. The Snow Prince is come, the doom is at hand. That's the chant. There was then a great calm that overcame the elves that still stood. Through their mass the Snow Prince did ride, and as a longboat slices the icy waters of Fielding, he parted the ranks of his kin. The magnificent white horse slowed to a gallop, then a trot, and the unknown elf rider moved to the front of the line at a slow, almost ghost-like pace. The Nord warrior sees much in a life of bloodshed and battle, and is really surprised by anything armed combat may bring. But few among us that day could have imagined the awe and uncertainty of a raging battlefield that all at once went motionless and silent. Such is the effect the Snow Prince had on us, all, for when the joyous cries of the elves had ended, there remained a quiet known only in the solitude of slumber. It was then our combined host, elf and Nord alike, were joined in a terrible understanding. Victory or defeat mattered little that day on the slopes of the Most Ring Mountains. That one truth we all shared was that death would come to many that day. Victor and vanquished alike, the glorious Snow Prince and elf, unlike any other, did come that day to bring death to our kind, and death he so brought, like a sudden violent snow squall that rends travellers blind and threatens to tear loose the very foundations of the sturdy soul. The Snow Prince did sweep into our numbers. Indeed, the ice and snow did begin to swirl and churn about the elf, as if called upon to serve his bidding. The spinning of that gleaming spear whistled a dirge to all those who would stand in the way of the Snow Prince, and our mightiest fell before him that day. Ulfki Anvilhand, Strom the White, Freda Oakenwand, Heimdall the Frenzied, all lay dead at the foot of the Most Ring Mountains. For the first time that day it seemed the tide of the battle had actually turned. The elves, spurred on the idea by the deeds of the Snow Prince, rallied together for one last charge against our ranks. It was then, in a single instant, that the Battle of Mosring came to a sudden and unexpected end. Finna, daughter of Eofreyr, a lass of only 12 years, and squire to her mother, watched as the Snow Prince cut her only parent in her rage and sorrow. Finna picked up Eofreyr's sword and threw it savagely at her mother's killer. When the elf's gleaming spear stopped its deadly dance, the battlefield fell silent, and all eyes turned to the Snow Prince. No one that day was more surprised than the elf himself at the sight that greeted them all. For upon his great steed the Snow Prince still sat. The sword of Eofreyr buried deeply in his breast, and then he fell from his horse. From the battle, from life, the Snow Prince lay dead, slain by a child. With their saviour defeated, the spirit of the remaining elven warriors soon shattered. Many fled, and those that remained on the battlefield were soon cut down by broad-gnawed axes. When the day was done, all that remained was the carnage of the battlefield, and from that battlefield came a dim reminder of valour and skill. For the brilliant armour and spear of the Snow Prince still shined. Even in death, this mighty and unknown elf filled us with awe. It is common practice to burn the corpses of our fallen foes. This is as much a necessity as it is a custom, for death brings with it disease and dread. Our chieftains wished to cleanse Solstheim of the elven horde, in death as well as life. It was decided, however, that such was not to be the fate of the Snow Prince. One so mighty in war, yet so loved by his kin, deserved better. Even in death, even if an enemy of our people. And so we brought the body of the Snow Prince wrapped in fine silks to a freshly dug burrow. The gleaming armour and spear were presented on a pedestal of honour, and the tomb was arrayed with treasures worthy of royalty. All of the mighty chieftains agreed with this course, that this elf should be so honoured, his body should be preserved in the barrow for as long as the earth chose, but would not be offered the protection of our storeroom, which was reserved for Norddead alone. So ends the account of the Battle of Mosring and the fall of the magnificent elven Snow Prince. May our gods honour him in death, and may we never meet his kind again in life. That was the book. Pretty long book.
Yeah, and with that said, so, all right, we've got about 2 minutes until we take our first break. Now, first of all, I want to say, like any lore book in the Elder Scrolls, that one in particular, just as well, is very, it's a very great analogy. All this lore, all this history is very, I don't know what they're all great analogies to what has happened in modern and recent history. And that's why I think this game is so alluring to so much people. But with that said, in a minute and a half, can you give a brief summary of what you just read to everybody? What does that mean?
Okay. So the summary was that there was the last battle between the Nords and the Snow Elves. Basically, the Snow Prince was their well-respected and loved leader, and he was a great warrior. And basically, they were losing the battle. Then he came in, and he was such a good warrior that he actually managed to turn the tide of the battle. And it seemed like the Snow Elves were actually going to win. But then he killed this girl's mother, and then the girl picked up his mother's sword and threw it savagely at him, and then it went right through his breast and managed to kill him. And then basically the Snow Elves fled, and those who didn't flee were cut down and killed. And so the ones that fled are basically the ones that... So two things happened. Either they went to the dwarves for help, and the dwarves force-fed them fungus, which made them blind and then made them their slaves, or they fled into the mountains and became like we saw in Skyrim, the the ones that still look normal.
Yeah.
But then the twisted ones are the ones that went to the dwarves for help because the fungus really messed them up.
Yeah. See, yeah.
Quite sad, really.
Yeah, and that's something that I think a lot of people don't really. I mean, the books are there. it's there for reading, but a lot of people don't pay attention to it. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the whole reason why we're doing this podcast, is to explain to you, for those of you with short attention spans, there you go. That's what happened,
Yeah.
and with that, we're 30 minutes in, so let's go ahead and take a break, and we will come back in just a few minutes.